I'm going to show you the most underutilized tool in strength and conditioning, and that is velocity-based training using one of these. So what this is a linear positional transducer. It attaches to the barbell, and it's going to tell you the barbell speed, and through the barbell speed and the load of the barbell, we can determine metrics like power and force, which are really important in the development of my youth athletes. What is velocity-based training? All it is just tracking the speed of different movements. In this video, I'm going to show you how it's traditionally used and how I personally use it. So traditionally, coaches have used velocity-based training to figure out an athlete's force velocity profile, it's called. So we're mapping their force and velocity, force on the y-axis and velocity on the x-axis. And what we're looking for is where the athlete is deficient. So are they force deficient? Maybe they're super fast, but they're a little bit weak in the gym, or they're velocity deficient. They're super strong, think of like a power lifter, but they're missing some of that high-end speed work. And using that data from their force velocity profiling, we can figure out where they're deficient and where we should take their training. Our job as strength coaches is to move that force velocity curve up and to the right, so we're making them a better overall athlete, and then we can dictate where their training goes from there. And so that is how it's traditionally used. The problem with that is that it's very tedious. So not only do we have to set up that force velocity profile for every athlete, we have to set up for every exercise they're tracking. So if they want to know their force velocity profile for their bench press, we have to do that full spectrum test. If they want to set it up for their squats or their cleans, same thing. So for me personally, I don't set up people's force velocity profiles anymore. I find it too time consuming. And in the summer months when I get my athletes back from school, I find sometimes the gym time is a bit scarce. So we don't want to be wasting precious gym time on retesting and testing different force velocity profiles. So the first reason why I use VBT is auto-regulation of my athletes. Auto-regulation just means how an athlete changes their volume and their progressions day to day, set to set, week to week, based on how they're feeling that day. We know that athletes' readiness changes day to day. My young athletes, sometimes they like to go out, see their friends, stay up late. So we have to be able to monitor and change their workouts intra-workout. Sometimes we don't know exactly how they're feeling on that day. We can't have conversations with every single athlete that comes through the door based on how they're feeling that day. So the velocity-based training gives us that data point that shows us how well they're moving. We know that at certain intensities, the bar should be moving at a certain speed. If we see they're way under that number, we can cut them off, keep them safe, bring them in the next day, and pick up where they left off. We know that injuries are going to occur more often when an athlete's more fatigued, so we don't want to push it through those days. Conversely, if we see them moving very well that day, they're pushing higher velocities than they have, we can increase the intensity of the movement and take advantage of those good days. So it works on both sides of the coin. We can pull them back when they're tired, and we can push them a little bit harder when they're feeling good. So secondly, and my personal favorite reason to use velocity-based training, is augmented feedback. Augmented feedback is simply taking external feedback from a coach or from a velocity-based training device and using it as motivation for your next reps and sets. So what we do here is we put up the data on the TV. I find that works really well with the athletes. They want to beat each other in the gym, and they want to beat their own scores. When you get a bunch of competitive athletes together, you'll see that motivation can really drive up their results in the gym. There's very few motivational cues their coach can give them in the gym that'll rival wanting to beat their teammates and friends with their lifting. And last but not least, velocity-based training can help us identify certain specific training goals we want our athletes to achieve. So again, if we look at the force velocity profile of an athlete, we know max power is somewhere between 30 and 50% of a specific lift. But instead of going through that tedious scale of figuring out for each lift where they hit max power, we can just get them lifting and track power output with the velocity-based training implement. Not only does that save us time, but we can get right into the workout right from day one in their power blocks. We can be tracking power. And again, with that augmented feedback effect, the athlete's going to want to produce more and more power each set and each workout going forward. So when we talk about tracking speed, we can target specific velocity zones. And those zones are starting strength, speed strength, strength speed, accelerative strength, and absolute strength. So all of those different speeds will be grouped depending on how fast the bar is moving. I like to make things a little less complicated than that and break it into 3 different training zones, and that's speed, power, and strength. So what we're looking for is anything below 20% on that force velocity curve is speed. Anything about 20 to 60% is power. Anything above that, 60% is strength. And again, these overlap with each other. It's not like one turns off and then it turns on, but these are general guidelines I like my athletes to follow depending on the block they're in. So if you are looking to take your training to the next level, I do believe that velocity-based training is the next evolution in strength and conditioning. And if you found anything of value in this video, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. And let me know in the comments if you have used velocity-based training before, how it's helped you, and what you've learned from it.